Japan's security map is being redrawn at high speed, and Beijing is watching every move. In Tokyo, a new and unusually outspoken prime minister has warned that a Chinese attack on Taiwan could directly threaten Japan's survival. In Manila, leaders are quietly negotiating to buy Japanese air defense missiles and possibly even warships. And in Beijing, President Xi Jinping is answering with warships, Coast Guard flotillas and military drills stretching from the South China Sea to the Philippine Sea. At the center of this storm is Japan's first female Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi. A long-time conservative hardliner on China and defense issues. She came into office in October 2025, promising to strengthen Japan's security posture and lean even more heavily on the alliance with the United States. That message hardened dramatically during a parliamentary debate on 7 November, when she was pressed on what Japan would do if China tried to blockade the waters around Taiwan. In response, Sanae Takaichi said a Chinese attack on Taiwan could create an existential crisis situation for Japan, allowing military action in self-defense. Those few words detonated a full-blown diplomatic crisis. Beijing accused Tokyo of gross interference in what it calls an internal Chinese matter, and Chinese commentators and diplomats unleashed a wave of unusually personal attacks. One Chinese consul general in Osaka, Shi Jinping, went so far as to write on X that Xi Jinping said the dirty neck that sticks itself in must be cut off, a violent image that Tokyo condemned as extremely inappropriate and which he later deleted under pressure. The comments fed into what analysts describe as a textbook episode of wolf warrior diplomacy, nationalist, theatrical, and aimed as much at domestic audiences as foreign ones. China's official organs followed up with more formal threats. The Chinese military warned that a defense spokesperson said Japan would pay a painful price if it stepped out of line over Taiwan, directly linking Tokyo's new posture to the most sensitive issue in Chinese foreign policy. The Taiwan Affairs Office, which manages Beijing's policy toward the island, issued its own message that China had the firm will, strong determination, and strong ability to defeat any attempt at Taiwan independence or foreign interference. Together, these statements made clear that Beijing now sees Japan, not just the United States, as a central player in any future Taiwan conflict. Tokyo has not backed down. The government insists that Takaichi's comments are consistent with existing Japanese law, which already allows the use of force in existential crisis scenarios where an attack on a close partner could fatally endanger Japan. At the same time, officials have tried to lower the temperature by stressing that Japan still wants a peaceful resolution of cross-strait tensions. In the background, domestic politics are heating up. Opposition lawmakers and protesters worry that the government is eroding the country's pacifist traditions, while conservatives argue that Japan has ignored the military danger from China for too long. The fallout has not been limited to speeches. Under Takaichi, Japan is accelerating concrete defense moves that directly touch China's red lines. One pillar is the planned deployment of medium-range surface-to-air missiles on Yonaguni, Japan's westernmost island, just over 100 kilometers from Taiwan. Chinese officials see such deployments as part of a broader Japanese effort to knit together a defensive arc across the East China Sea that could complicate Chinese operations in a Taiwan crisis. The second pillar lies much farther south, in the Philippines. Manila has found itself on the front line of China's push to control nearly the entire South China Sea. Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia ships have repeatedly used water cannon, blocking maneuvers and dangerous close passes to challenge Philippine vessels near Second Thomas Shoal and Scarborough Shoal areas that an international tribunal has said fall within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, but which China continues to claim. President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr., in office since 2022, has responded by tightening defense ties with both Washington and Tokyo. The Philippines has granted the United States expanded access to bases that sit close to Taiwan and to key sea lanes, and US forces have begun rotating anti-ship missiles and troops through northern Philippine sites that could play a central role in blocking Chinese naval forces in any Taiwan contingency. At the same time, Manila has embraced Japan as a rising security partner. Over the past decade, Japan has provided the Philippines with Coast Guard patrol vessels, maritime surveillance radar, and concessional loans for larger ships, all framed as maritime law enforcement assistance rather than traditional arms exports. Now, Tokyo and Manila are quietly exploring something far more sensitive, the transfer of the Type 03 Chu-Sam air defense system, Japan's domestically produced medium-range surface-to-air missile. Informal talks reported by Japanese media suggest that this could become the first export of such a system under Tokyo's newly relaxed arms export rules. The missile deal would dramatically enhance Philippine air defenses at a time when Chinese aircraft are increasingly active over contested waters. It could also open the door to future exports of refurbished Japanese warships, including older destroyers, to the Philippine Navy. Chinese officials see this as part of a pattern, Japan arming a rival claimant at China's maritime doorstep. One Chinese Defense Ministry spokesperson has already accused Tokyo of trying to form small cliques and disrupt the South China Sea by exporting weapons and naval ships to Manila. For Beijing, the optics are stark. On one front, Japan is talking openly about military involvement if China attacks Taiwan. On another, it is edging toward arming a country that is locked in an escalating series of confrontations with Chinese vessels in the South China Sea. The Chinese leadership frames both moves as part of a broader strategy by the United States and its allies to contain China's rise, especially after a series of joint maritime drills that have seen US, Japanese and Philippine ships sailing together inside what Manila says is its exclusive economic zone. Xi Jinping, who serves as China's president and chairman of the Central Military Commission, has responded by leaning on one of his favorite tools, the projection of military power at sea. In recent weeks, China's Navy and Coast Guard have conducted new patrols around Scarborough Shoal, a flashpoint reef off the Philippine coast, with official media describing the operations as necessary to resolutely safeguard China's sovereignty and maritime rights. Chinese forces have also staged live-fire night drills, high-speed maneuvers and helicopter operations across the South China Sea, signaling both readiness and resolve. The activity isn't limited to waters directly off the Philippines. A Chinese task group has been moving through the Philippine Sea, the deep water expanse east of the Philippines and south of Japan, closely monitored by the Australian Defence Force. Canberra says it routinely tracks such deployments, but the timing underscores just how crowded and contested the region has become. For Xi, these movements serve multiple purposes, testing the reactions of US allies, signalling to domestic audiences that China will not be pushed back, and building operational experience for a navy that now has global ambitions. On the other side of the equation, Taiwan is also changing the calculus. President Lai Ching-te has proposed an additional $40 billion in defense spending over the next 8 years, focusing on air defense, drones, and resilient command systems, an effort he frames as ensuring that Taiwan is not the weak link in regional security. Beijing has denounced the plan as a path to confrontation, but in Tokyo and Manila, it is often cited as evidence that Taiwan itself takes the threat seriously, strengthening the case for deeper cooperation with the island's partners. The United States under President Donald Trump is intimately tied into these dynamics. Washington has long maintained a deliberately ambiguous position on whether it would directly defend Taiwan, but its activities on the ground and at sea are increasingly visible. From new anti-ship missile deployments in the northern Philippines aimed at the Bashi Channel to regular freedom of navigation patrols in the South China Sea, Trump has also personally engaged with Takaichi, offering support for the US-Japan alliance as Beijing's rhetoric intensified, even as his administration presses Tokyo and Manila to shoulder more of the regional defense burden. Inside Japan, Takaichi's stance is reshaping long-running debates over the constitution and the country's role in the world. She has long advocated revising the pacifist clause, Article 9, to more clearly recognize the self-defense forces as a normal military and to allow greater use of force in emergencies. Business leaders worry that confrontation with China could endanger one of Japan's largest export markets, while security hawks warn that inaction would leave Japan exposed if a Taiwan conflict breaks out. Street protests outside the Prime Minister's residence, where demonstrators hold signs calling for her resignation and warning against war, show that these questions are no longer confined to policy circles. In the Philippines, the conversation looks very different. There, the public debate is shaped less by constitutional theory and more by daily encounters at sea. Fishermen complain of being chased away from traditional fishing grounds by much larger Chinese vessels. Coast Guard officers speak of being dazzled by lasers and struck by water cannon. Against that backdrop, Japanese patrol boats, radars, and a potential missile shield are often framed by officials as tools of self-defense rather than steps toward a wider war. Still, the risk of miscalculation is real. Every new deployment, a Japanese missile battery on Yonaguni, a Chinese live-fire drill near Scarborough, a US anti-ship battery in Luzon adds another piece to an increasingly complex military puzzle. If a Chinese Coast Guard vessel collides with a Philippine resupply ship, or if a Japanese patrol aircraft and a Chinese fighter jet misjudge each other's intentions, the escalation ladder could be climbed very quickly. In that scenario, the political statements we are hearing today would shape how each capital interprets and responds to the crisis. Diplomatically, there are still off-ramps on the table. Regional states continue to talk, however fitfully, about a binding code of conduct for the South China Sea. Hotlines exist between some militaries and coast guards, and ASEAN governments keep trying to frame the disputes as problems that should be solved through law rather than force. Yet even these efforts are coloured by the new reality that Japan is no longer sitting quietly on the sidelines, and that Xi's China is more willing than ever to use its growing military power to shape events. For ordinary people, the strategic chessboard translates into small but tangible changes. Residents on Japan's remote southwestern islands hear more fighter jets overhead and see more uniformed personnel at small local ports. Filipino fishers adjust their routes based on where they believe Chinese patrols might appear. Taiwanese civilians participate in air raid drills that would have seemed unthinkable a decade ago. Each of them sits at a different point along the chain that stretches from Tokyo's Diet Chamber to the reefs of the Spratly Islands and the shipping lanes of the Philippine Sea. In the end, the story unfolding in the Western Pacific is not just about one remark in Japan's parliament or one missile sale to the Philippines. It is about how three interconnected fronts, Taiwan, the South China Sea, and Japan's own security transformation are converging into a single strategic contest. Xi Jinping's China is trying to deter outside powers from shaping that contest. Sanae Takaichi's Japan and Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s Philippines are betting that closer cooperation, and in some cases more weapons, will prevent a war rather than invite one. None of the players say they want open conflict, but all are preparing for the possibility. As the ships and aircraft keep circling in the South and East China Seas, and as negotiations over missile sales and basing rights quietly move forward, one reality stands out: the margin for error is shrinking. The decisions being taken now in Tokyo, Beijing, and Manila will determine whether this tense moment hardens into a permanent cold confrontation or whether the region can still find a way back from the brink.